How can Australia innovate more? It's a huge question. I mean, Australia has all the makings of an innovative nation, a well-educated workforce, a market economy, quite unregulated. But I think what might be missing a bit is a culture of risk-taking. You have to have a culture where it's okay to try something new and it's okay to fail, and treat failure as a lesson learned, not as a permanent black mark.
I think one of the greatest levers that Australia can use to become more innovative as a country are to recognize that within our organizational institutions in Australia, there is still a pervasive fear of experimentation and a pervasive fear of failure.
Australian corporates, my advice to you would be to embrace autonomy and experimentation, to give your people, whether at the division level or at the individual level, the ability to go act autonomously and try things out, and then to give them the ability to fail and be rewarded for it. That's the key.
Organizations in Australia and beyond still are struggling with how to help people to truly, in a human way, bring the best of themselves to the workplace.
If you think about Silicon Valley, we all know the billion-dollar startups that come out of it. What you don't realize is there's 100 startups invested in for every one that produces $1 billion valuation. It's the rampant experimentation and the freedom of those startup CEOs and teams to try new things that produces the big hits.
We only are able to get heightened levels of innovation and to maximize innovation when individuals in organizations are able to bring the best of who they are to the workplace.
And if we want Australia to be highly innovative, it has to adopt the same philosophy, both in the startup landscape and inside of corporations. Treat your individual employees like entrepreneurs.
You know, the past teaches us so much about how we got to where we are, and it can also guide us into the future, but we need a little crazy sometimes to shake us of the past and get us in the mindset to reinvent things. So it's one of the reasons we're so excited to support this initiative.
Paul actually thought that there might be a fun interlude for me to just do a bit of a chat about my experience working with Bill Clinton on public-private initiatives and really sharing a bit about what makes change happen, or AKA what I learned from Bill Clinton.
Australia's facing a lot of upheaval and change. There are a lot of disruptions coming at us, geopolitical disruptions, digital technology disruptions, and fundamental changes in the way assets are managed and valued and understood. The next 100 years are going to be tough, but we believe science can turn what seems tough now. We believe science can solve the impossible and turn what's tough into great opportunity, great benefits. So the next 100 years can be just as good, if not better than, the last 100.
There is no shortage of white papers on innovation, which we all found, but we did feel that there was an opportunity to do a primary research initiative, which would be to tap the insights of Australian leaders in businesses who are thinking about innovation all the time, who have perspective on what's happening inside corporates. The sense of, is failure an issue inside corporates, and really be able to layer into those insights a framework that CEB has developed over the years, which has 27 attributes for a culture of innovation.
I'd say historically, there were big personalities in Australian business, but they were those very much A-type CEOs who like to grab the headlines, and beneath there wasn't a respect for science. There wasn't an appreciation of the importance that entrepreneurialism plays in the economy.
In our early days, we did have people being like, look at these kids saying they're going to send stuff to space. And we couldn't raise money, right? Despite the fact that we were both engineers and had no idea how to put together a decent-looking deck. They're literally cringeworthy. You will physically shudder if you look at them. But we had early adopter customers, so we got customers instead of investors.
We celebrate athletes, but we don't celebrate innovators. We certainly don't celebrate scientists. But sport, and again, apologies to State of Origin fans, to Queenslanders, but here I've heard so many scientists get called nerds.
But then the other side of the poppy problem, and all of that is essential, but the other side of the poppy problem is that we don't actually elevate. So the poppy never gets big enough to be seen. And I think what I heard in Larry's talk and what I've heard from Paul is that there's a sense that potentially in Australia, culturally, there may be a worry about promotion or self-aggrandizement.
We need to be aware of failure. One of the things that I used to read on TechCrunch back in the day when it was still independent, they used to do a weekly Deadpool email. And they would talk about all the startups that went into the Deadpool. And that was very interesting for me because it helped to see, okay, what are the companies that are failing? Why did they fail? What did they do wrong? Did they just spend all their money here or there or whatever? And I found that really interesting. And slowly kind of formed an opinion as I evolved. So I think those are the kind of things that we need. You know, we hear a lot about the cohorts coming out of some of these programs. Well, what happens to them after 2 years? Nobody knows.
I think I'd love to echo that. And all of these initiatives are fantastic, but we really need to be striving for quality and not just dashing to just celebrate absolutely anything and everything, and looking beyond those dollar values for what actually is success.
But we have to remember that unless people, this is something I learned from President Clinton, unless people know what's happening, you'll never actually move the dial. And one of the things I always remember about Bill Clinton is working with him, you would meet with him for maybe 5 minutes, and that's all he needed to understand very sophisticated problems. And then he would immediately say, well, how soon can I hold a press conference about it? And a lot of people criticized him for that. You know, Bill's always cheating his own. But one of the things he said to me once, I'll never forget. He said, remember, it never matters what we're saying, Gene. It matters what the public is hearing. And I've always thought that's such an important reframe. So perhaps asking yourselves in the unique Australian way, what is the Australian public hearing? What are the future entrepreneurs like Solange hearing that allows them to elevate and accelerate their work?
So we're the first Australians to ever launch anything to the International Space Station. So we had to find the hoops to jump through it. I wish Larry had done that before us, because for a two-man team starting it out, that was a giant hurdle to figure out how to get 16 other countries to let us do that. But we've done that now, and I think this week I can actually formally start saying that our next mission, our second mission, and Australia's second mission to the International Space Station is happening in August. So,
because you should always be in beta. What a great way to be. Always in beta, always trying to do it better, always trying to deliver it faster, always trying to create more impact.
So we also talked about the role of vocational training and how that might be failing in a lot of ways. And so we talked about that and how that needs to be part of the conversation. And then sort of we brought it all back and we said there's lots of things that we're talking about and this is just so big. Where do we start?
Everyone really wants to make sure that this is a very empowering message, and I think that's spot on.
We did get quite a few offers of support in the next stage, building the prototype.
There was a good analogy around what could we learn from the gaming community, in that they're online in a physical community or they're playing against each other. They jump offline and look at resources online and come back together.
Innovent really needs to start with bite-sized problems. So it's not trying to boil the ocean, not trying to do anything huge, but it's really just enough to get people excited and get people involved in the process.
So I'm going to sort of upsell it a bit more. Everyone thought it was awesome, and it was pretty much perfect in its current form. So the dating analogy absolutely resonated. So scale and engagement, as Narelle said, is super important. You need scale for that network effect. Dating sites don't work without scale. They don't work without engagement. So the quality of the matching was super important. But luckily, those dating sites have been there and done that. They know how to match things really, really well. So let's learn as much as possible.
But the main idea was, let's gamify it, let's have some fun, let's get everyone involved in it. Do you want to add anything, Caitlin?
Yeah, so we had a lot of comments/questions about whether it would be a reality TV style show or more of a drama documentary style show, and I guess we have to kind of figure that out, or do a mix of both, because the main aim of the channel was to show the journey and the process behind innovation, not just the end result, or not the beginning, not the end, but the whole package. So either way, that's what we want to do with this, and we want to promote this to the whole of Australia.